Hi, my name is Mike May. I am the Director of Insights at Railed Magnet, and welcome to Zero to Social in 6.5 Steps. This is a webinar that is designed to help companies who are either at the early stages of their social program where they're still trying to figure out what it is you want to do with social media, how you want to incorporate it into your business objectives, or you're at the, okay, it's up, now what phase, where you've decided to do something on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, and the next step is to build that initial momentum and make this social program start to generate the kind of ROI that your business is looking for. As far as I'm concerned, there are a couple of objectives for any business and social media program. The first, like your email program, should be to move your business forward. It's not about being cool. It's not about being contemporary. It's not about showing that you're a certain kind of company for being on social media. Whatever's important to drive your business forward is what you should be looking to social media to do. It's that effective a channel. And also, like email, I think the other objective of your social program should be to get smarter as marketers. Metrics and analytics and reporting then become very important, not just in that they can help you market through social media better, but there are some really interesting ways that we can now take a look at how social media is contributing towards overall marketing objectives in order to determine how to allocate resources. So channel attribution becomes really important in figuring out, do I put energy into Facebook or energy into email, and which channels are more productive for different types of content and different business objectives. We're going to talk about all of that today. We are well past why do we get started in social media. We're also past what is social media good for. I think we already have a pretty good handle on how large and important and profitable social media can be for businesses. Where we are now and what this webinar focuses on is how do we get started. And here are the 6.5 steps that we're going to go through today that'll get your social program up and running and build you that early momentum you need for it to start contributing meaningfully to your business operations. First, we're going to identify the resources. Who within your organization is available and qualified to participate in your social media programs, and what is it you look for in trying to find those resources? We're going to talk about which channel or channels to choose and also how to set those channels up so they make sense for your organization. Content strategy is really important. Different social channels work better with certain types of content, and I'm going to spend some time talking about the differences in those content types and give you some interesting examples as well. Integration is also critical. Tying your social program into the rest of what you're doing, so that your audience knows that you're on social media and that it's connected with everything that the rest of your marketing communications are tied into. Audience development, of course, is also really important. There's no point in going through steps 1 through 4 and putting all of this energy into your social strategy and your social execution if you don't have enough fans and followers for it to be worthwhile. So we're going to talk about everything from how content and networking and other tactics are available to help you build that audience, as well as the concept of critical mass within social media. As I mentioned before, measuring, tracking, and analyzing is really important in order to determine the ROI of what you're doing within social. And attribution is going to be a big topic in this section as well. And finally, the last step, the half step, is amplify. After we've knocked out all of those other topics, and you get to the point where your social program is up, it's running, it's humming along, you've got it where you want it, we're going to talk about some of the next steps you can take to really amplify that, try some new content tactics, as well as different social sites that you might want to take a look at. So step 1 is identifying the resources. Who within your organization is available and qualified to participate in your social media programs? The interesting thing about social, and the way that it's different from so many other channels, is that the content required for social is equal parts proactive and reactive. And what I mean by that is you do need to schedule and allocate time on a regular basis to proactively push content into your social channels. The word that I use is tending, where you constantly have to tend these channels, and we'll go into that into more detail in a little while. But the other part of your social program and the way that it's different is social is a conversational channel. It's where your audience, your customers, your prospects, and others expect to be listened to and answered. So in order to take full advantage of social media, you also have resources in place who are available to respond to comments and questions almost as soon as they come in. Certainly much quicker than a 24-hour window that most organizations use for email customer service, or the end of the business day, or however you're organized. The faster, the better in social media. The other reason timing is really important in social media is the more opportunistic you can be about getting in front of stories, about participating in things that are happening in real time in social media, either conversations that you're starting or something that's happening within your industry, a parade that you as a brand can get in front of, the better off you're going to be. So if you have resources in place who can stop whatever they're doing and put a little of energy into social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that timing becomes really important, and doing it quickly reaps huge benefits. If you want a trend, you've got to tend. This word is going to come up a lot. The concept here is that you can't really schedule everything you're going to be doing in social media. Yes, you have to push content into it pretty regularly, and we'll talk about what that frequency is in the different channels, but you also, like I said, have to have people in place to constantly nudge it, to respond to comments, to be in place to pick up the conversation should they start. It's not something like a newsletter that you can send out once a week or even once a month and expect it to prosper. It's something that needs attention every single day, and in some cases for a couple of minutes every single hour. So the kind of resources and the availability is very different than what you need for some of the other marketing channels. The good news is that there are a lot of people in your organization who are already qualified to be participating. Normally, social media programs are launched and tended by the marketing or communications or PR department, but for better or for worse, 90% of your company is already on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, and a lot of them are very adept at generating content that's interesting and engaging. Even if it's not on your industry or on your company, they've got those tactical skills. And I'll bet a lot of them would be more than happy to turn their interest in Facebook and Twitter and social channels to work, and participate in your social program. Now, the other good news there is that social media is a channel that is actually very well suited for a distributed content creation program where several people are involved in tending, in responding, in generating content. So it's not like you have a hard decision in front of you where you have 10 qualified people and you have to choose the one who's going to be the person principally in charge of your Twitter or your Facebook program. You can set it up so that multiple people are contributing, and in fact it ends up working better that way in many cases. We're going to talk about choosing which channel now or channels make sense for your organization. First, we're going to look at business objective. And what we'll talk about is how each of these channels contributes towards a specific business objective. Some are better suited towards some objectives than others, and we'll see that. We'll talk also about the type of content that works well within each of these sites, and also the successful personality of the content or of the brands within those sites. Now, what I mean by that is every site already has an audience in place. And yes, it's a vast audience, but there are different tones and timbres within these sites and within these channels that don't need to be matched by the content that's being created, but brands that understand how to create content within the tone and the timbre that these sites' audiences are already expecting are the ones that are going to enjoy the most success. And I'll talk a little bit about how that works as well. So let's start with the business objectives. If your business objectives are to build awareness or brand development or engagement, Facebook is very good for that. The way Facebook is organized is perhaps the world's most efficient and effective referral engine. The way the social graph is set up within Facebook, it makes it very easy for people to interact with a brand and then for all of their friends to realize that they're interacting with a brand. And every time that happens, it's a tacit recommendation. if this person comments on this blog link that you've posted on your Facebook site, all of her friends are realizing that she's interacting with this brand in a meaningful way, which is another way of saying, hey, you should take a look at this brand too, and people are aware that that's happening on Facebook. So that's one of the ways that brand awareness is achieved through Facebook, simply seeing who your friends, what brands your friends are interacting with, introduces people to new companies. Brand development and engagement are very closely connected. Whenever you can create any sort of engagement with your brand is becoming more meaningful within your customers' lives and within their professions. So whether they're leaving comments or liking posts or posting on your wall or asking questions or sharing content with their friends or retweeting, in the case of Facebook, whenever they're doing anything that shows some level of engagement, then that is deepening their connection between this person and your brand, which does a couple of things. It makes them more aware of what you're doing. It makes you move up on their choice list. You're closer to the top of mind when they start thinking about making a purchase within your category. And the other thing that it does is it shows that they've interacted with the content you've created. And if that content is an accurate representation of your brand, it helps develop and position your brand within those customers because they're getting that message, and it shows that they're getting that message. So Twitter, you'll see at the bottom, engagement is just as important, is also another business objective that Twitter is very well equipped to accommodate. The same level of engagement happens differently in Twitter, but the same business benefits are generated. A lot of organizations, particularly in B2B, use Twitter for content broadcasting. Actually, not just B2B, B2C as well. It's pretty common for business users to do some content broadcasting in Twitter. And what I mean by that is, if you generate a lot of content, if you're a publisher, if you have a blog, if you are speaking at conferences, whatever it happens to be, Twitter is a good place to keep people notified of that. And the reason is that a lot of people use Twitter expressly for environment scanning, to see what's happening in the news, to monitor trends, to see what the people and the brands that they are connected to or who they like, to see what they're reading and see what they're recommending. So it's a very good way to stay abreast with what's happening within your industry or your field of interest. A lot of brands are using Twitter for customer service as well, and it really has become the de facto service channel in social media. Not exclusively, and we'll see an example of a brand using Facebook for customer service as well, but we'll also see how Twitter is very effective in that capacity. LinkedIn, throughout this entire presentation, LinkedIn is a horse of a different color. Facebook and Twitter provide a lot of opportunities for brands to represent themselves and to generate content and to connect with people. LinkedIn is much more person-to-person content or contact. So, while these business objectives can be achieved through LinkedIn, lead generation and lead development and education, it's less the brand that is the star here than the people at your organization who can take advantage of this channel. And we'll talk about that as well. Because Facebook is all about interactivity and engagement, the content needs to reflect that. Multimedia is a very powerful driver of engagement on Facebook. Pictures and videos, things that people can wrap their minds around really quickly and understand. Shorter posts are much more effective than longer posts on Facebook, simply because there's so much content on Facebook, and whatever you post is juxtaposed with 20 other posts from brands outside of your industry, from your fans' friends, from your fans' spouses and college roommates. So you don't have, if you think about the inbox as a point of comparison, the Facebook news feed is probably even more cluttered and a more hotly competitive environment for garnering a customer's attention. So frequency is important, but also having this really engaging and interacting tight little content makes a big difference as well. Interactive elements are also important, asking questions and driving that conversation in a genuine and authentic way. And that's an important distinction to make. Facebook users are savvy. They've been on the service for a long time. They can tell when you're phishing. You know, if you go on to Facebook Monday morning and you say to your users, "Happy Monday, how was everybody's weekend?" and you haven't had any interaction or engagement with these people before, they're going to know all you're trying to do is start a conversation that is completely meaningless to them and to you. But we'll see some examples about how even fairly prosaic questions and comments like that can actually drive a lot of conversation if the brand has already broken the seal with customers and that dialogue is already opened up and the brand is seen as approachable and listening and engaging. And so we'll talk about how that happens. Because so many people, like I said, use Twitter for environment scanning, articles and blog links are really strong content to use there. Driving traffic through Twitter can be very effective if the content is unique and it's interesting and it's relevant to your audience. It's a lot of the same messages that you learn from email as well. The other types of content that are interesting or that are productive are what I consider epigrams and relevant observations, and these are shorter form pieces of content. Remember, in Twitter, you've only got 140 characters. So the more you're able to create something that is pithy, that is insightful, that is interesting, that is relevant, but is still short enough that you can capture it in that, that short form that Twitter allows, that's the stuff that works really well. So, more angular content that really arrests attention and demonstrates a point of view or demonstrates acumen within your industry is the kind of stuff that works very well. And LinkedIn, it is where people go to do business and to get smarter and to network. So the types of content then necessarily reflect that. The articles and blog links are useful on LinkedIn as well. And also, I think probably the most effective form of content for a brand on LinkedIn is actually nothing about the brand itself, but it's the LinkedIn profiles of your key employees. That's what people go to see, and that's how LinkedIn ends up working principally for brands. People will find connections with other people, and then they follow those connections back to the company. And when you get to the brand page on Twitter, the company page, you get to see all of the people within the organization who are on LinkedIn. So your people end up acting as a funnel for your brand. So those profiles of these people become a very important part of that content. I mentioned, the news feed in Facebook and how your posts are juxtaposed with stuff that your fans are probably a little more interested in, what their family is doing, pictures from the softball game they played in over the weekend, whatever, not just their business lives, but their personal lives. And so in order to break through, there are some qualities that successful content exhibits. The first is that the brand itself has to use content that demonstrates that it's social. Like I said before with the tending, you have to be seen as a brand that's listening, that's paying attention, that's ready to respond to interaction with your content. Energetic is also really important. It starts to break through that clutter. And it also shows that you understand this channel. There's a lot of energy within Facebook. People are genuinely enthusiastic about sharing content there and interacting with other people. And so if the tone of your content is resigned and it just feels like you're pushing the same content into Facebook as you would push any place else, and it doesn't feel like you're tailoring it for that channel, then it's not going to be as effective. And again, at the very top, your brand does have to be seen as approachable. And we'll talk about why interaction is so important in a little while on Facebook. But it's a very key attribute. On Twitter, as you can imagine, if your brand is seen as informed and insightful, it's going to make people more likely to follow you. It's going to make make people more likely to click on the links that you provide. If they think that what they see from you is unique, it's different, it's not the same stuff that they're getting from the major trades that they're probably following on Twitter or that everybody else is retweeting. So the more you can do to unearth unique content, whether it's your own or from sources that you've identified, and share that content and position yourself as a resource, that's going to help a lot. I got witty in here as well. I think Twitter is the channel where wit goes the furthest. It doesn't mean you have to be funny. It certainly doesn't mean you should try to be funny if it doesn't fit with your brand. But wit carries a lot of weight within Twitter because of the short form, because of how transient the content is. It shows up, and then within minutes, it's off people's radar. So just one of the things that we've seen is that humor and wit helps to really break through those obstacles. The tone on LinkedIn is a little bit different. Productive, ambitious, respectful. It's more of a business meeting than the cocktail hour after the business meeting. So keep that in mind when you're generating content on LinkedIn. So now how to set up your channels, and we'll go through these quickly, and then I'll give you some, as we look at some examples later on, you can see what I mean for some of this. First thing on Facebook, when you build your account, you can't change your name. Keep that in mind. On Twitter you can. You can decide to change your name later and you keep all of your fans and followers, but with Facebook you can't. Right on down to spaces and capitalization, so be mindful of that when you set it up. You also need 25 likes as soon as possible, and the reason for that is you need 25 likes before Facebook will give you a vanity URL. If you don't have 25, then your URL that you have to drive people to is facebook.com/companyname/24938XLQN7 or something like that. And it becomes, as you can imagine, very difficult to cross-promote in printed media if that's what your URL is. So here's where as soon as you set up your account, tell your entire staff and their family to go like you just to backfill those likes a little bit. And also, the header image is really important. Facebook is pushing all of their brands by the end of March of 2012 towards the timeline. So instead of just an icon, a brand icon, which they used to use, which is your logo in most cases, and you don't need to do much with it, they now have a large horizontally oriented banner image. You can change as often as you want, but you do need to have something in place. And it's actually a great opportunity to better merchandise your brand because it does give you more visual real estate to work with. But it is something that you have to prepare ahead of time, or it's a notable omission if all you have is a tiny little logo. Don't forget, featured likes pages. Also on your brand page, Facebook features all of the other brand pages that your brand likes. Just as if you're an individual user of Facebook, you can have friends. If you're a brand, you can like other brand pages. And there's a section right front and center on the brand pages where 5 or 6 of these are showcased. Now, for these, you can actually go into the preferences and select which of the brand pages logos you want to rotate through this section. So you may like 20 or 30 different companies. You may like a bunch of your clients. You may like the brew pub around the corner where your entire staff goes on Fridays after work to have a drink together. You may like the hotel where you hold your annual conference. But you might not want all of that to be the first impression that users have when they come to your Facebook page. So use the preferences and select the marquee clients whose pages you've liked. Select the associations that your organization is a member of. Select the technology partners you integrate with. Select publications that you contribute to. Whatever brands represent yours very well, whatever ones boost your credibility are the ones you want to use the preferences and select so they can rotate through that section and make the most of that opportunity. And also, don't forget photos. Photos are really important on Facebook. It's one of the first things that people look for as they scroll through the timeline, which is what the new pages are based on. The photos are the parts that become visually very arresting. And so they're going to carry even more weight than they ever have in Facebook. So no small part of your Facebook content strategy should be images and photos and having those ready to go. And the advanced setup is something called a light gate. There's a feature, there are some tools that allow you to do this, so that when people visit a certain page, a certain tab on your Facebook page, they see some content if they're not a fan and other content if they are a fan. And I'm going to give you an example of this in just a little bit. Twitter, the icon, when you set up, is brand critical. When you load it into the Twitter site, when you launch your account, it looks, it's a pretty good size, and obviously it'll be very easy to read. You'll see it right there. But the vast majority of people who are using Twitter are looking at it on mobile devices and through dashboards like TweetDeck or Hootsuite. And in those instances, the icon is significantly smaller. So make sure that whatever icon you use is equally recognizable at even a quarter the size as what you see it on the Facebook page, because sometimes that's how it's represented. And make sure you're testing it in some of these alternate channels as well, on your mobile device, for example, to make sure it works. Your background image is also very important. And I think what's most important about it on your Twitter page is that you have one. You just can't use one of the default background images within Twitter. It looks like you don't care about the channel. So take a look at what other brands are doing with their background image. Figure out how you can merchandise that real estate and do something with it. And finally, I mentioned that timing and interaction and engagement is really important within Twitter. When you set up your account, you can set up your notifications, which allow you to let somebody in your organization, you or somebody else or multiple people, via email or alerts on their mobile phones, every time you're mentioned, every time some of your content is retweeted, and every time you have a new follower or you receive a direct message. This is really important because this is how you tend. Knowing immediately when somebody is interacting with your brand on Twitter gives you the opportunity to immediately respond. And that's how engagement happens. That's how your audience is developed over time. So make sure you do set those up. Otherwise, there may be things happening on your account on Twitter that you have no idea about until the next day, and then it's too late. Don't forget to follow people and brands who inspire, inform, and entertain you. Remember that people are looking on Twitter for brands to follow that they think are going to inspire, inform, and entertain them. So if you go into there with the same mindset and you try to find a really interesting perspective to call your own point of view from on Twitter, that's going to help you a lot. On the one hand, this will allow you to identify and share content with your followers that is unique and interesting and relevant, but it's also going to give you examples of people who are using Twitter very well. So some of the people and brands you should be following should have nothing to do with your industry and are just people who are very good at Twitter. It's good for you to see what makes powerful content. So find some accounts that are really interesting that you think are using Twitter in a way that your brand could as well, even if it's outside of the industry, even if it has nothing to do with your business, and learn some of their functional expertise, if not their domain expertise. No real advanced setups in Twitter. In LinkedIn, your basics obviously are your company profile page. That's really the only real estate you have to work with as a brand within LinkedIn. Don't forget, there is an opportunity on this page to import an RSS feed, so your blog feed is very good for this. I mentioned also how important your people are within LinkedIn. Probably the most compelling content on your brand page is the list of your employees that links to their profiles. So one good way to take advantage of your LinkedIn presence is to make sure that all of your key staff have LinkedIn profiles and that they are made current. Also, on your company profile page, there are tabs for careers and products and services, and there's also a place where you can solicit recommendations from your customers for your brand. I don't think these are that important, but I have them listed here because there's really so little opportunity to merchandise your brand specifically on LinkedIn that if you don't do anything with these, it sort of feels like you're not putting a lot of energy into this channel. So simply having something in place in these at least shows that you're tending to this channel and you're paying attention to it. All right, I'm going to talk about Facebook content strategy and how important interaction is to everything you're doing on Facebook. So the way Facebook works is you start over here on the left-hand side with your content. This is a link to a blog post. This is a question you're asking of your fans. Or it is a photograph from the conference you were just at, or it's a video of a TV interview that your executives did not long ago. You post this on your wall, and it goes into the news feeds of your primary audience. These are the people who are your fans and followers. And then what happens is they interact with this content. Now, whenever somebody interacts with this content, then the secondary audience, your secondary audience, or rather the friends of your primary audience, see in their news feed that somebody has interacted with your content. So let's say, for example, somebody in your audience is Susan from Akron, Ohio. You post a blog, and Susan takes a look at it, and she clicks on it, and she reads the blog, and then she comes back to Facebook and she likes it. And then she said, you know what, that's a really interesting point of view. And she leaves a comment that says that. She says, thanks for posting this. I never thought about it that way. So then all of Susan's friends are going to get an alert in their news feed that said, Susan likes this article by company A. And here's what Susan said about the article right there in the comments. Now, a lot of Susan's friends are not within your target market, right? They're her spouse or her kids or her college roommates or her neighbors. But some of them may be. And so they'll see that she's interacting with you, and that's how they become aware of your brand. Now, as you can imagine, the more interaction you drive from more people, the broader the secondary audience you're reaching with this content. And sooner or later, what happens is you reach enough of the right people in the right circumstances, and some of these people become part of your primary audience as well. That's why interaction is so valuable within Facebook. That's how it's a word of mouth recommendation engine. Every time somebody interacts, they're telling all of their friends that this brand is one that has captured their attention and their engagement. Now, Facebook uses an algorithm called EdgeRank to sort of qualify the interaction. Essentially, the way that it works, or its objective, is to figure out what content is the most worthy of passing along to somebody else's newsfeed. As you can imagine, there are millions and millions of links and status updates and interactions vying for very limited space in everybody's newsfeed. And so the more interaction a piece of content on Facebook receives, the more it boosts its edge rank and makes it more likely to show up in news feeds, show up in more news feeds, and linger in news feeds longer. So the more interaction you can drive, not only are you potentially reaching more people, but it's lasting longer in news feeds and can drive even more interaction. It gets a little stickier on Facebook, which is a very elusive property, but also a very profitable one, because that sticky content is what snowballs into more and more engagement. As you can imagine, if 3 people comment and then 7 people and then 14 people comment, everybody who sees this starts to wonder, well, why are so many people commenting? I got to get in here and take a look at it. And so it really works, to the brand's advantage to drive all of that engagement. Now, the accelerator tip here is that you can use your staff to like some of your content and boost the edge rank. I don't think that every time you post you should have 25 people descend upon the thing and simply like it. And I'd also do not recommend having your staff pose as customers or prospects and post sort of fake accolades on the content as comments. People can see right through that. So be transparent and be honest. But if Susan from Akron does comment on this blog and there are already 2 or 3 likes on it, then it's already got a little boost to its edge rank, which means it's more likely to show up in news feeds, and it's more likely to linger a little bit longer in some of them. So there are ways of accelerating that a little bit without going too far. So I'm going to give you some examples of different content strategies on Facebook. And to do this, we're going to go straight to Facebook to take a look at them. I'm going to show you an example of a light gate. The company here is a hotel in New Orleans called the Dauphine Orleans Hotel. I'll go over and take a look at this. Now, here it is, and here's the new Facebook timeline brand page that they're moving everybody over to. Now, what the Dauphine does is they have this page here, which is their all access page. And you can see this like button there. This means that's showing up because I am not currently a fan of this company. So I click on that page. And this is, they use something called an iframe, and this is full HTML functionality. You can see they have their full reservation engine here. I can choose when I'm checking in and checking out and look for room availability. I can even sign up for their email list right here. And there's a space for a promo code. Well, heck, I'd sure like to have a promo code. How do I get one? Facebook fan deal, like us above to reveal an exclusive promo code for Facebook fans only. And it's grayed out so I can't see it. So, okay, well, I'm going to go up and I'm going to like them. I like them. The page refreshes. And there's that promo code. It's a different page that reveals that, and now I can enter that into here when I make my reservation and get a discount or a free warm cookie on my pillow when I arrive, whatever this promotion happens to be. Another example of content strategy is to drive interactivity, and Vistaprint is very good at this. I'll show you how they're doing it. Now, they haven't switched to the new page yet, but they will by the end of the month because everybody is. Facebook is doing away with this page, but the content will remain. Content strategy remains the same. Now, what they do is, look at the very top. Every night at the end of the day, they post a message like this. We're off for the night. We'll return all messages tomorrow morning. If you have an issue, call us here. Now, they do this at the end of every day. We'll scroll down. There they are the previous day, right? Down a little further. There they are the previous day. Exact same message. Every single day at about 5 o'clock they post this. And what they're saying, essentially, is every other time we are here, we are listening. And so it's a very powerful statement to say we are not here because every other time they're implying that they are. And in fact, that's the case. When they come in, when they arrive, they check in. Good morning, everyone. I'm catching up with last night's messages and I'm available to help in any way that I can. People like this. People are commenting already, sending in customer service responses. Vistaprint is using it for customer service. And people are responding, and they're responding to all of this as well. Now, 11 comments, 11 likes. That's not an insignificant number of comments for for a medium-sized Facebook brand. But sometimes they just really nail it. When I think of spring, blank is the color that comes to mind first. 110 comments on a question like that. Now, the only way they're going to drive that kind of interaction is by tending this channel, and everything they do on Facebook shows their audience, we're listening, we're paying attention, we want to hear from you, we want to talk to you, we actually value what you have to say. It's not just a ploy to boost EdgeRank, we're asking questions and we want to talk to you. And we want you to know that we're listening. And so by doing it that way and constantly paying attention to it that way, and tending it in that regard, they've been able to create a very engaging and vibrant and interactive Facebook page that generates a lot of referrals around Facebook because all of these comments show up on everybody else's site, on everybody else's newsfeed. All right, we're going to take a look at MTV as well. Now, they're an interesting example from a publisher's perspective. What they do is not something everybody can do, but they really leverage unique content very well. As you can imagine, because they're a brand, or because they're a publisher, a media company, they have all of this unique content, and that's what they use MTV for. Their MTV page for. They drive traffic to their TV shows websites. They have trailers from their shows that they don't show anyplace else. They have unique arrangements with different movies. Some of them are produced by their own studio, so they have all of this unique content. Now, you may not have the same type of unique content, and you may not have content that 6,300 people are going to like and 568 are going to make comments on. I mean, their audience size is 32 million. But you do have, if you're a publisher, you do have content that is unique to your industry, that is valuable. So finding ways of rolling that out in Facebook in ways that drive engagement is a very powerful content strategy because it helps drive that referral engine forward and bring in more people to your page. Now, a very different strategy is one employed by Starbucks, and they rely largely on audience-generated content. So here they are, and when you get the Starbucks page, what it shows you first is the content they've added. So here's something that they added on Tuesday. Here's something they added 19 hours ago. This is from Wednesday. This is from the 23rd. This is from the 24th. 19th, the 18th. So once a day, once every other day, they're adding content versus MTV, which is adding content every few hours. But the real interaction here is posts by others. They have, over time, encouraged their fans and their followers to come straight to Starbucks and post something themselves. So 2 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 16 minutes ago, 12 minutes ago, 27, 39 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago. People are constantly coming to the site every couple of minutes, taking pictures of their Starbucks beverages, talking about how much they love Starbucks, and interacting that way. Now, as you can imagine, it takes more energy for someone to go to a brand's page and upload a picture than it does to simply click on a like button when they see it, and that's reflected in EdgeRank. So they get more boost from people interacting in this way by posting directly on the page than other brands do from people commenting or liking. So, that's one of the ways that they were able to drive 29 million likes, over the course of, of their Facebook program. So, on to Twitter and content strategy. I mentioned content broadcasting, and here's an example of that. 4C is a business-to-business company in the digital retail industry, and they are using Twitter to talk about their own content. You can see it's not highly interactive, right? They're talking about a new blog post by @LarryFreed, who's one of their executives. So they're also making mention of his Twitter account, so their followers might also start following him, and vice versa. Here, they're talking about what conference they're going to be at and where to find them. And here, they're pointing to a new bit of research that they were involved in. Again, their own content that they're involved in, and they're just broadcasting it. It's not highly interactive. Zappos uses Twitter for customer service. And they actually have a number of different Twitter accounts. This one is just the Zappos service account. But you can see that this feels very much like we just saw in Vistaprint. Hey guys, Tanya here with you. Hope everyone is ready for Friday. Obviously, Tanya is introducing herself because she's not the only person who does this. There are probably many people who are involved in Zappos Twitter customer service. So she's introducing herself as a person, and that helps drive that engagement. It shows they're approachable and that they're listening. And you can see in these other ones, she's talking directly to these people. Now, what's interesting is that even though in the top one she's only talking to Fee-Fi Fomenifer about what to do with their shoes to make sure they fit and they're comfortable, there are 12,000 people who are following this account who, by virtue of seeing Zappos talk one-on-one with Fee-Fi Fomenifer, these people all know that if they have a question about anything to do with their Zappos purchase, they're going to get the same kind of immediate, real-time attention as well. And that's a very powerful customer service statement to be able to make. So now an example of using Twitter for engagement. Like Zappos, if you read some of these, we've got an extra race number for an event coming up. Reply "Pick me" in the next 2 hours for your chance to race. So what they've done, they've reached out directly to their audience saying, here's an opportunity for you to win something. And the way that they've structured this is actually brilliant. Instead of the first person to retweet wins, they say, anybody who wants to mention this and mention us on Twitter for the next 2 hours, that makes you eligible, and we're going to draw somebody randomly. So they've got a 2-hour window where people can be mentioning them on Twitter and driving those word of mouth recommendations. And then at the end of that 2 hour, they respond directly to Kay Desart and say, hey, congrats, man. We'll direct message you soon with all the info you need. So you can actually hear on the other side of this, and in this top one as well, they work hard to show that this isn't just a brand. This isn't content generated from the marketing department. You can hear another person on the side of these posts. It makes them feel approachable. It makes them sound, it humanizes the brand, and it makes you realize this is a Twitter account and a brand that's paying attention, that's going to listen to you. If you say something to them, they will likely respond. Content strategy on LinkedIn is very simple. It's people. It's the people at your organization, and it's groups of people. It's groups that you create. It's groups that your people participate in. It's discussions that they can participate in. Your people are a funnel, and everything they do on LinkedIn funnels attention back to your brand, and that's how you can make the most of it as part of your content strategy. All right, integration. We're going to talk about how to integrate social media into the rest of what you're doing. First of all, what does it accomplish? The first thing it does is it builds awareness of your social presence, and that's really important because it shows that there are other channels outside of the website and outside of email and outside of the telephone where you are able to be reached and you're engaging with your customers. But the other thing it does is it seeds your social audience with this existing audience. Let's use Facebook for an example for why this is important. I talked about EdgeRank and how that interaction is what drives word of mouth, right? Well, your customers, the people who are already familiar with you, are the ones who are most likely to interact with you at the beginning of your social campaigns. So having more and more of your existing customers on Facebook can only increase your chances of your content being interacted and engaged with, which boosts your edge rank and generates that those referrals and that word of mouth that you're looking for. So it's really important to have them there to seed those conversations. And finally, every time you let your customers know and your prospects that you're involved in social media, it implies to them that you're listening. The only way you can have a successful social strategy is if you're tending it. And if you're doing it well, people are going to see that and they're going to recognize this is a company that's paying attention to me. It's increasingly an expectation, no matter who your customers are, no matter what industry you're in, no matter if you're selling $6 socks or $250,000 consulting agreements. Your customers want to know that their questions can be answered, that somebody is going to be able to respond to them in real time, no matter what it is. And social media, showing that you're on social media certainly implies that. So ways to integrate. Share with your network links within your email. This is something that Real Magnet offers. It allows your audience to share email content on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the social channels of their choice. The other way is to explicitly mention, not just with icons, although that's also important. Having the icons for your Twitter, for your social channels on your website, and on email and your electronic channels to make it very easy to click on those and see what you're doing, but also to talk about them. You'd be amazed at what a difference it makes to say in an email, hey, did you know we're on Facebook? You can go over here and become a fan on Facebook, and here's what we're using it for. Or you can also follow us on Twitter, where we post all of our latest blog links as well as some really interesting articles from around the industry that we think our customers might be interested in. Telegraph what you're doing in those channels and talk explicitly about them and ask them to join, and it'll make a big difference. There are also some personal ways of integrating. Not only should you be promoting your company's Facebook presence and Twitter and LinkedIn on business cards and in signature files, but if your staff is using Twitter for business purposes or is using LinkedIn for business purposes, by all means, encourage them to put that information on their business cards as well. The more you can do to boost their own personal audiences, the better you're doing for your brand. Because in LinkedIn, all of that, as I mentioned, is a funnel that comes back to you. And on Twitter, some of your staff are going to be more adept at generating followers than your brand at first, or might have a head start at this point. So they can retweet some of your brand messages on Twitter and make all of their hundreds or thousands of followers aware that you're now on Twitter as well, and that can only help boost your audience. The thank you pages after purchase and contact forms and auto reply emails are also very good places to promote your social presence, because these reach customers at a time when they are at their most engaged. They've just purchased something. They've just interacted with something on your website. They've filled out a form or asked somebody to contact them, or they've sent in a question. And so saying at this point, here's where else we are, here's what we're doing on these channels, is a great way to capture that engagement and move it to those other channels. All right, we're going to talk about audience development. Now that you're on social networks, what are we going to do to actually boost the size of your fan base and the number of followers that you've got? Well, in Facebook, we talked about it already. Right? The principal tactic for audience development in Facebook is your content itself. Engaging content that drives edge rank and some of those like gate promotions that take people who visit your site and convert them to fans so that you can continue reaching them with subsequent content later on. There is an opportunity to use Facebook events if you're having, if you're going to be at a conference, for example, or if you're hosting a meeting. It's not a registration engine. It's just a way for people to say, yeah, I'm going to be there, and they can see everybody else who's going to be at that event and network with people ahead of time. So that's another way of fanning out through Facebook and getting people aware of what you're doing there. Facebook also has a number of advertising options. The one that I like is sponsored stories. And what that is, it's a very easy way for you to serve up ads about your Facebook page to the friends of your fans. And this is important because you're not just reaching, some moderately targeted audience. You're reaching people who are seeing the ad and it says, my friend is a fan of this company. And that's a tacit recommendation. So if they're at all inclined if they're at all inclined to follow you, if they're at all interested in your industry or your business, then those ads can be very effective at bringing in not just more fans, but more fans who are already pre-qualified in some way. The best way to develop your audience through content with Twitter, like Facebook, is to use the kind of content that's going to get passed along. Getting retweeted and mentioned on Twitter is the best thing that can happen for audience development, because this lets so many other people out there, tens of thousands of people, depending on who and how many people are retweeting, not only that you're on Twitter, but that you're doing something interesting, or you are passing along or generating some interesting content. So here's where unique content, where being the first account to jump on an interesting industry story that gets retweeted, all of this can help and move your brand in front of as many different people on Twitter as possible. Conversely, there's a lot of quid pro quo in Twitter. So the more you can retweet other interesting content or mention people, the better it's going to be for your brand. And the reason for that is that whenever you give credit to somebody else on Twitter for content that you found, they are very likely to go to their audience and say, hey, thanks, Company A, for retweeting that. Hey, thanks for the mention. I appreciate that. They scratch your back as well. So in exchange for you sharing with your audience, they're going to share your brand with their audience. And so attributing content to other brands is actually a very good idea in Twitter. There are promoted tweets available in Twitter in the same way that you can advertise on Facebook. I have them in parentheses here for a couple of reasons. One, they're not available to everybody yet. They're rolling them out right now. But two, when they are available, it's only for accounts that are spending $25,000 in advertising through Twitter. So as you're getting off the ground, it's not something you want to look at right now. Audience development through LinkedIn. You could start your own group where you are the stewards of the content within that group, and if it's an open group, other people who are interested in that content will join the group, and then you've got the opportunity to shape the content and the discussions that go on in there to some degree, but also to message all of these people directly, which is really important. You can also start discussions within other groups. Now, this is not something that a brand can do. Starting groups is, but you can start discussion. Your people can start discussions and join discussions in other groups to build their personal profiles and also post content. Again, this is something that your people can do. If you have blog links, if you have research, if you have articles that are educational, that are informational, white papers, whatever, that's the sort of thing that people can go into very targeted groups and say, hey, here's what we're doing, or here's this blog that's right on topic with what we're talking about here, have a look. And so it's a good way for your people to help disseminate content. Via networking, like I said, your people can join groups, and there's also a program called LinkedIn Answers where you can ask questions and you can answer questions that are business related around your areas of expertise. Again, this is what people are doing, not your individual, not your brands, but that funnel will work and drive people back towards your brand. And also, if you do have a group of your own that you start, you can cross-promote that group, or your people, again, can cross-promote that group in complementary groups and let people know about it. Tend. Whenever you're thinking about audience development and social media, far more than advertising, it's all about content. The better your content is, the more engaging your content is, the more interactive it is, the more frequently it's updated, the more it's going to help develop your audience. So how often should you be posting? You know, we saw a number of different examples in Facebook, right? Starbucks, a huge brand, posting once a day, every other day, but that's because so many of their fans are posting. Vistaprint posting probably 3 or 4 times a day, but a couple of those were just not posting content as much as posting announcements. We're off for the day, or hi, we're back for the day. So, you know, in most cases, 1 to 3 times a day is a good place to start, depending on your content strategy. It shows that you're paying attention to the channel. It shows that you're there. And it's also important, though, that it's unique content and that it is consistent in the way that you're using the channel. Twitter, you can get away with more frequency. You know, as many as 4, 5, 10 tweets a day. And the reason is that the content is so transient on Twitter. It shows up in people's feeds and then it disappears, you know, very, very quickly. The vast majority of the attention you get from tweets happens within the first 5 minutes. It's remarkable how quickly things happen on Twitter. And then it trails off very quickly. But the upside there is that you can tweet the same thing or a modified version of the same content. If you have a blog link, for example, and you publish it at 10 a.m., you can tweet then, and then you can go back on Twitter at 2:30 or 3 and tweet a link to the same blog. And even if you do reach the same people, some of the same people, it's not seen as spam on Twitter because so many brands do it, and then the content is so short and it's so short-lived that it's acceptable. So there's an opportunity to have another bite at the apple on Twitter. On LinkedIn, the opportunities to post content as a brand are very limited. There's the RSS feed, and so every time you publish a blog, if that's linked, that'll show up on your page. But the real way to think about LinkedIn is how many of your people are involved and how often are they interacting with the service and, you know, posting in discussions or participating in discussions or answering a question or joining a new group or making a new connection. It's almost unlimited how much interaction you can have. And what's valuable about LinkedIn is that all of this interaction shows up on their pages. It shows up in emails. LinkedIn is doing a very good job with emails, letting people know who's using the service and for what. So that spreads out a lot. So the interaction does pay off, both through the type of interaction and also because that interaction is merchandised throughout the system later on. So I want to talk just quickly about critical mass, the concept of critical mass within Facebook. And here's where it really makes, where it makes the biggest difference. So here are some snapshots of the pages of a number of different brands. And what I want to highlight here is on the bottom of each of these tabs, you can see the number of people who like the page and also the number of people who are talking about this. What talking about this represents is the number of people who have liked a piece of content on this page, who have commented on it or have posted on the page directly, or have become a fan of the page within the last week. So you can see what it looks like all the way across. And if you just do some math, you can see here on Starbucks, it's a 1.1% rate. 1.1% of their fans are talking about them. 2.9 on Southwest, 2.2, 1.3, 2.6. And you can see, 28 million people, 2 million, 126 on Vistaprint, all the way down to a few thousand and even only 700 for small, medium businesses. It's pretty consistently, in fact, it's exclusively between 1% and 3%, hovering right around the 2% mark, no matter how big the organization is. So it's safe to use that as a benchmark for an effective Facebook strategy. If it is engaging, and we know that that Southwest Airlines and that Starbucks and Vistaprint all have highly engaging and interactive Facebook presences, 2% is a good benchmark to aim for. So if that's the case, let's say you're posting 5 times a week, once every business day. Your goal is to have 2 interactions per post. Why 2? Well, 1 doesn't do much for you. It doesn't actually drive any interactivity if it's just 1 post. That second one, or one interaction, that second interaction is what starts to create a conversation. It actually shows that multiple people are interested, and it starts to pique the interest of other people, and it starts to show up in more news feeds. So really, 2 posts is a minimum that you'd want to drive interaction from all of your posts. If that's the case, you're looking at 10 total interactions per week. And if it's at a 2% conversion rate, what that means is that you need 500 followers. If you don't have 500 followers, then simply based on the regular, the benchmark conversion rate, you're not going to have enough people involved to get you those 2 interactions per week. So does that mean you can't be successful with under 500 followers? No, you can. You absolutely can. But what it means is that as you start to think about your audience goals, how big do we want our Facebook presence to be? 500 should be your first target. That's the first hump you need to get over, and then you can actually see how your Facebook program is going to operate. The concept of critical mass really only applies to Facebook because of because of EdgeRank. It doesn't apply quite so much to Twitter. But that 500 ends up being a pretty interesting and important number to keep an eye on. So finally, we're going to look at channel attribution, how to measure, track, and analyze. And for this section, we're going to take a look at some of the reports that are available through Real Magnet's Social Magnet tool that allow you to see exactly what you're doing with social media, how it's integrating with email, and how the channels are stacking up against each other in terms of how productive they are towards meeting your marketing objectives. The first thing I'm going to show you is the activity calendar. And what you can see here is that all of your activity, all of this brand's activity, is represented right here in a monthly view. The purple and the light blue tabs here represent social messages that have gone through Twitter and Facebook, and red is email. So very quickly you get a sense of whether or not you're tending, right? Am I doing enough within my social presence to take full advantage of it? Obviously, in these first couple weeks, this brand isn't. There's an opportunity and almost a need to be more attentive to social channels earlier on. Otherwise, they can wither on the vine, and people aren't going to realize that you're actually paying attention there. Later on, absolutely, absolutely, there's more happening in all of these channels. So that's from a social standpoint what you're more interested in seeing. The other thing that you see here is that this particular brand isn't doing anything on Saturday and Sunday. That's a big opportunity. It's also a function of resource availability, so it's something to think about. The next thing I'm going to show you is a channel comparison report from Social Magnet. And what this does over a period of time, and this is for a month, it shows the number of messages sent out within each channel. So there were 6 emails, there were 30 Facebook posts, 85 Twitter posts, and 4 LinkedIn messages. And what you see over on this side, on the right-hand side, are the number of clicks that each generated. Well, some quick math shows you that on email, the 635 clicks came from 6 messages, so that's over 100 clicks per message. Good productivity coming from email, depending on the size of the email list here. And what we don't have here are the size of the list, but the brand would know that. In Facebook, the number of clicks per message is significantly lower. So the level of engagement is not where it needs to be. But then you can take a look at Twitter. 85 messages, the volume of activity is significantly higher, 1,137 clicks. So almost twice as many clicks from Twitter than from email. Now, you do the math here, and it's something like 13 or 15 clicks per message. That's not a huge number by any stretch of the imagination, but because the frequency in Twitter can be so much higher than it can be in email, you can't send 85 emails a month. You can't send, depending on your brand, maybe you can send 1 a day, but what Twitter lacks in clicks per message, it makes up for in the frequency of its message. So that's a really interesting finding right there to see that such a large percentage of the clicks for this particular brand come from Twitter. And that allows you to see which channel is actually driving a lot of engagement. So the other graph the other report I want to show you is this one on the category comparison. Every message that you create within Real Magnet, whether it's an email message or something to go on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you can assign it to a category. So for our purposes here, we've assigned all of our messages to either a newsletter, and this is the newsletters that are emailed out, as well as the social posts that point to the web version of a newsletter, webinar promotions, which happen both in email and in social media, driving people to webinar registrations, and also blogs. Now, this is an interesting category because blogs don't get mentioned in newsletters. They don't get their own emails. So the opportunity exists to promote them in social channels where it doesn't exist anyplace else. And if you think about it and you take a look at what's happening, in Twitter, we're getting 220 clicks over the course of this reporting period that are in the blogs category. During the same period, 0 coming from email. And that's because, like I said, the blogs aren't promoted in email. What's really valuable about social media and where it can play a unique role in your marketing communications is that it allows you to promote content that isn't big enough for an email. Every time you post a blog, unless you have an email subscription expressly on that purpose, you're not going to let your whole list know that, hey, we just posted a blog. If your executive is interviewed in a trade publication, you're not going to do an email on that, but it's something you could certainly put on Twitter or Facebook. So smaller pieces of content that maybe aren't ready for, don't deserve their own email can still be merchandised. And what this shows is that the audience has an appetite for that level of content as well. So think of all of the pieces of content, all of the things that your organization is doing that you can't promote in email or can't promote as often in email or in dedicated emails that you can make more use of in social media. Not only does that help promote that particular content, but it drives engagement with your audience in ways that is part of an audience development strategy and also deepens their connection to you simply by you being more involved in their lives and in their business. And finally, the last step, step 6.5, amplify. Now, here you've got your Facebook and your Twitter and your LinkedIn programs up and running. They're going well. You've got your audience at a manageable size and you're getting the kind of interaction you need. What can you do next? Well, there are things you can do with content that take better advantage of these channels. Promotions, for example, link-gate promotions, or like-gate promotions we talked about already. We saw that other promotion on the Power Bar Twitter account where they gave away an entry to a triathlon that they had, for example. Think of promotions that you can do that are designed expressly around driving engagement and bringing more people into your social spheres. There's also the opportunity to promote more social-friendly company activity within your channels. So there may be things that you're doing as an organization that you're not going to put in an email, but social channels are, by their nature, more social. So whatever you can do that taps into an affinity that your customer might have, that can go a long way. For example, here's the company softball team. There's no reason why, once you've established some dialogue with your customers on Facebook, you couldn't post a picture like this on Facebook and say, hey, we won 6-2 last night. Who else plays on a company softball team? Or something like that. And then anybody who's within your fan base, you've tapped into, who plays on the company softball team, you've tapped into an affinity of theirs. It won't matter to everybody, but it's going to matter a lot to a small number of people. And that's the kind of thing that can get a conversation started and be really powerful on Facebook. The next step would be made for social products. Now, here is an example of cause-related marketing. And here, in this case, Kentucky Fried Chicken is using, the pink color to promote cancer awareness. And it's a concept that really it takes off through social media. People can get behind the concept of curing cancer and share that with their friends on Facebook and on Twitter far more easily than they can get behind the concept of fried chicken and sharing that. It's just not so remarkable. So cause-related marketing, other programs and products you can create that will take off because it's something that people will be already willing to talk about in social channels is a logical next step. And then finally, even the banal within your organization can be social. Once you have an open channel of engagement with your customers on Facebook or Twitter, even something as mundane as Pizza Friday is something that you can share. It humanizes your company. It doesn't drive new engagement and bring in a new audience in the same way that the softball team would, for example. But what it does is it says, look, we're people too. We're not a nameless, faceless brand. I'm Tanya. I'm here to help you today. If anybody has any questions, hey, here I am, Tanya, with Joe and Tony. We're having pizza on Pizza Friday. But as soon as I get my slice, I'll be back and ready to answer any questions you've got. However you happen to shape it, there's a real opportunity in social media to humanize your brand, and content like this is actually something you can think about using. And then finally, in addition to adding more content, there are all of these different social channels to look at. A number of different ways to reach different audiences and look for different kinds of content that you can merchandise and extend your reach and engagement across all of these channels. So that's it. I'm going to leave you with a page of resources. Here's the address to an email and social group that we've created on LinkedIn where we're talking about a lot of this on an ongoing basis. Welcome you to join there. And also where to reach us on Facebook and Twitter. The blog category where we are listing all of our, where we are publishing all of our content on email and social media. And also how to reach me directly. I'm at mmay@realmagnet.com and on Twitter at Mike May Say. Thanks very much for tuning in.